There's something I hear a lot with betta fish, which is, well, at least they're not in a cup. I'm Leanne, a fish keeper and betta enthusiast, and I'm exploring my local pet stores to see what their betta care is like and what they're doing to change for the betta. I'm also going to discuss these little guys and their needs. Betta fish are tropical fish that are oftentimes mistreated. This setup has about the minimum requirements that he needs for a permanent home. I have a 5-gallon box tank with a sponge filter, an adjustable heater set at 79, quartz sand, and live plants. I do a water change about every other week. I take out about 30% of the water and replace it. And then I need to remineralize my water because I have reverse osmosis water, but normally you just need a water conditioner for tap water. There's much more to talk about, but for now, let's check out what our local pet stores are doing with their fish care. At both Northwest Seed and Pet locations, the staff was very welcoming. This is Laura Smith, a manager in the store. Can you tell me about the betta fish in your store?
Um, well, we don't have a huge assortment. We usually start with quite a few varieties. We usually keep them in jars. It's been that way for many, many years. It isn't the best way to keep them by any means. We would like to keep them in a different setup, and we're kind of working towards that right now. Getting like shelving units. I want to work towards getting actual box tanks instead of getting like little jars, just because the water quality isn't the best. I want them to have plants and this room to actually grow and spread and show their true colors instead of being subjected to old water in a jar. They're really popular, but we've had a lot of complaints about people not liking how they look and things like that. So,
With being in the jars?
yeah.
Why is having a heated tank so important?
Well, it aids with a few different things. Digestion is a huge thing. It helps, it helps a lot with keeping the parameters more optimal than they would in cold water. A lot of people are kind of under this impression that they can be kept in cold water, and they can, but I mean, because you can doesn't mean that should be the optimal conditions. So,
Have you made any changes to your store's betta care over time, and what changes are you making now?
we're slowly implementing a lot of different things. My coworker and I built this planted tank here that has more proper substrates. It's even living with other fish in there. There's shrimp in there. So we've noticed that the fish we put in there sell better, for one, and they're usually more active. They're a lot happier. They eat better, and we've tried to make more changes to their diet to where they eat more of the frozen thawed food instead of just a bunch of like the same, wheat flakes and things that aren't good for them.
Do you have any tips for new betta owners?
Probably the biggest tip, of course, is to do your research. In my opinion, bigger the better for the tank. The common misconception is that they can stay in smaller tanks, like 1 gallon and 2 gallon, and that's okay temporarily. But if you want to have a happy betta that has a good life, I usually recommend a minimum 10-gallon tank. And then I always recommend planted tanks, but you can have fake plants if you want. Consistent water changes, filters, heater, those are all recommended for bettas so they can have better lives and they'll last a lot longer. And it's, if you wouldn't give that to if you give it to your dog, why wouldn't you give it to your fish?
Right.
So
That's some really good advice.
yeah.
And lastly, do you think people are less prepared to take care of betta fish than other fish?
Oh, definitely, yeah. They're the number one popular fish for children. So, that's great. Implementing children into the hobby is fantastic. But a lot of parents aren't really willing to make that step towards better care for bettas. They're more interested in something that's easy for their kid, to where they can just throw it in like a jar or a bowl or whatever, and then that's it. but it's a good opportunity to show children how much work it does take
Right.
to teach them that responsibility. So I would definitely think that's something that could be implemented better.
All right. Well, that's all my questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
That was some great information, but when it comes to fish keeping, there's too many factors to mention. 5 gallons is the absolute minimum for a betta fish, but some experts or fish keepers suggest a 10-gallon minimum and that bigger is better. It's important to keep in mind, however, that betta fish have what's called a labyrinth lung, so they get their air from the top of the tank, and they need to be able to swim to the top and have plenty of resting spots. So if you go for a bigger tank, it needs to be long, not tall. As for the filter, the sponge filter is the best option. It causes the least surface disruption and it's very safe. They can't get stuck in it or anything like that. For the heater, I keep it at 79 degrees Fahrenheit. It's important to keep it between 76 and 80 degrees. A lot of the fixed heaters you'll see in the pet store that you can buy don't get hot enough. I purchased one earlier and it only got to 73 degrees, so I needed to buy a new one before I put any fish in here. It's very important that the tank is warm enough, because if it isn't, they will slowly and uncomfortably decline in health. They have repressed immune systems and so many issues that go along with it. As for substrates, like I said, I use quartz sand. There's a lot of options. People recommend for planted aquariums to use nutrition high substrates like fluval stratum that are more like a soil, but this is good enough for my low maintenance plants. I only have Java and Anubis plants here, so they don't need much nutrition. I use an all-in-one fertilizer for all my plants, and it's the most cost-effective I've found. This back here is an Indian almond leaf. It releases tannins into the tank, which are colorful. You might be able to see a slight tint. They're usually browns or purples, like purpley natural browns. They can be beneficial and have like healing properties for their fins, but you also have to be careful because they lower pH. As for fake plants, which are an option, you can buy silk plants that are safe for their fins. Instead of plastic plants, they can tear up their long, beautiful fins. For his diet, like I said, I feed him these nutrient-rich bug bite pellets. They're perfect for carnivorous tropical fish. And sometimes I feed him thawed frozen bloodworms, or these Daphnia treats I have here. They can help with bloating, but I usually just give him these. Another thing is that community tanks can be a great option. It's something people don't think betta fish can live with sometimes, but as long as it's a 20-gallon plus tank, they can actually thrive with other species, and of course as long as they're compatible in a community. The last thing I'll mention is that when you're getting a new fish, you need to be prepared to be patient and wait for your tank to finish cycling. Fish tanks, if you don't know, have something called the nitrogen cycle, and you need to be sure that the water parameters are safe before you put any fish or invertebrate in your fish tank. You can tell that it's safe by testing your water parameters. You could bring it to a local pet store. Northwest Eden Pet will test your water for you if you bring it in. And yeah, it's just very, very important, because if you don't do that, you might just end up killing the fish that you buy because you didn't take the precautions. Now that you know a bit more about what they need, let's check out the next store. The employee in the fish section that day, Adrian, has a bachelor's in fisheries and minors in biology and marine science. She also wanted to mention that the black mats under the jars retain heat from the lights and have heating mats underneath them. Adrian is in charge of the new betta shelves at the store and showed me what she's working on.
Just did the company's brochure, what their sort of specs they're looking at it, and like the nice thing is, like with these sorts of units, it makes it so that they no longer have to rely on water conditioner. It actually comes with a like a dechlorinating option in there, so then it lasts for a year. Is us here in this department, we use about a gallon of water conditioner a month.
Oh,
because
wow.
of all of our water changes that we do, and just keeping it on top of everything. So then that removes that, and then it has a UV filtration system in there, which will minimize about 90 to 95% of the bacteria, so that there's going to be less risks of them getting sick. Usually our betas tend to be pretty good. If anything, they get a little shredded. That's Ruby. She's our chatty girl. She's our little spicy French fry.
Unfortunately, Petco would not allow me to film in their store. That being said, they were one of the examples on my list of a store that's not taking any steps to improve their care and honestly has the worst care for betta fish I have seen. Anytime I walk into Petco, I see the betta fish stacked on the shelf in those small cups, and they're always so low energy, or they're even dying or dead. If you're like me, you'll look at the fish in these types of stores and think that you need to save them. But it's important not to support box breeders because you're supporting the cycle of mistreatment. And honestly, you're probably not getting a very healthy fish. They're likely to struggle with genetics and inbreeding, which can cause all kinds of problems. You're not invincible from this with reliable breeders, but you can at least trust that they're being bred ethically. On a lighter note, the last store I visited has exquisite care and has had that great care for bettas for years. While many underestimate the care betta fish need, there are really good examples of what's right out there. Fish keeping isn't a straightforward hobby with straight answers, but you can do your best by doing the most with your knowledge that you have available to you.